Have you ever wondered why you feel so deeply exhausted? I am not talking about the physical fatigue after a long day of work, but a weariness that seeps into your very soul. It is the feeling of having given your absolute best, your care, your loyalty, your time and your love, only to receive silence, indifference, or worse, disdain in return. From a young age, we are taught a classic moral lesson. Never give up. Keep knocking, and the door will open. This belief becomes our compass. We believe that if we are kind enough, patient enough, and forgiving enough, even the coldest heart will eventually melt. We believe our sacrifice is a currency that can buy respect and love. But life is often harsher than fairy tales. There is a brutal truth that few dare to speak. Sometimes trying to knock on a locked door isn't persistence. It is self-abuse. In psychology, there is a state known as over-functioning in relationships. This happens when you do too much, giving endlessly in hopes of maintaining a connection, while the other person is under-functioning. The more you compensate, the more imbalanced the scale becomes. And frighteningly, when you turn your sacrifice into a daily habit, others stop seeing it as a gift and start seeing it as your duty. They stop saying thank you and start complaining the moment you pause to breathe. This is the tragedy of kind souls who lack boundaries. We fear that if we let go, we are failures. We fear being called selfish. So we endure. We swallow our sadness and convince ourselves, maybe I'm just not good enough yet. I need to try a little harder. But stop for a moment. Take a deep breath and look at your hands. Are they bleeding from pounding on that unfeeling wooden door? The forgiveness we are discussing today is not the empty cliché of running to hug those who hurt you. No. It is a deeper, stronger, and more painful concept. Silent forgiveness. It begins with recognizing your own worth. It is the act of stopping. Stop knocking. Stop explaining. Stop proving. And quietly walk away. Today, I will tell you 3 fables. They are not just stories about animals. They are mirrors reflecting your life, my life, and the lives of anyone trapped in one-sided relationships. Our first story begins at an old farm, with a creature who believed his voice was a gift, while the world treated it as a nuisance. Listen to the tale of Nislo the Rooster, and see if you find your own shadow within it. The story begins at a vast farm where the rhythm of life seemed unchanging. There lived Nislo, a proud rooster with magnificent plumage and the posture of a general. Every single day, before the first rays of the sun could pierce the night mist, Nislo was already at his post atop the highest roof. He would inhale the crisp morning air, expand his chest, and let out a powerful crow that echoed across the fields. Cock-a-doodle-doo. This crow was not just a sound. To Nislo, it was a mission. He was a living alarm clock, the guardian of time, reminding the farmers that a new day had dawned, saving them from laziness and oversleeping. Nislo believed he was contributing immense value to the prosperity of the farm. But what did he receive in return? Gratitude? No. Instead of praise or a handful of extra grain, what greeted Nislo every morning were curses shouted from sleepy windows. "Shut up, you damn bird! So noisy again!" Along with the insults came stones thrown aimlessly into the dark, meant only to silence him. To the farmers, Nislo was not a benefactor. He was a disturbance to their sweet slumber. They viewed his presence and his duty as a given, an annoying burden. Day after day, Nislo endured this humiliation. He wondered why his gift was treated like garbage in the eyes of others. The breaking point came on a gloomy, gray morning. After dodging a stone that grazed his head and hearing the final harsh insult, Nislo did not crow. He quietly flew down and perched on an old wooden fence at the edge of the farm, his eyes gazing toward the distant horizon. In that moment of silence, a painful but necessary realization dawned on him. Nislo understood a cruel law of life. Where your efforts hold no value, trying repeatedly to prove yourself isn't persistence, it is foolishness. He thought to himself, leaving with self-respect is perhaps the greatest solution right now. There is no anger in my heart, no resentment, only a deep exhaustion. It was the exhaustion of knocking on a closed heart. Nislo took one last breath of the farm's scent, gave a soft crow, not to wake anyone, but to say goodbye to his own past. Then he spread his wings and flew toward the unknown, seeking a place where his voice would be heard as music, not noise. That night, a strange and terrifying silence fell over the farm. No flapping wings, no crow to mark the watch, and disaster struck just before dawn. A group of thieves, who had long watched the farm and knew its routines, noticed Nislo's absence. Without that natural siren, the entire farm remained in a deep, comatose sleep. There was no warning, there was no guard. The thieves easily sneaked in, stole all the livestock and valuables, and vanished into the night. Everything happened in a deadly calm. The next morning, when the sun was high above the bamboo trees, the farmers finally woke up in shock. The coop was empty. Their wealth was gone. The silence they had once craved, the absence of the noisy crow they had wished for, had now cost them their livelihood. Only then did they realize. Nislo didn't just wake them up, he protected their safety. That annoying sound was the shield for their peace. But regret always comes too late. Nislo's story teaches us the first lesson of silent forgiveness. Forgiveness does not mean allowing others to continue disrespecting you. Forgiveness means you stop knocking on the wrong door. When you withdraw from a place that does not respect you, you not only protect your dignity, but also teach them a lesson that only loss can teach. The true value of presence is often only understood through the pain of absence. But Nislo was not the only one bearing the weight of ingratitude. At a river nearby, another creature was carrying the weight of the world on his back, all for a word called friendship.
Leaving Nislo's farm, let us travel to the banks of a wide and turbulent river. There lived Amara, an old turtle with a shell weathered by time. Amara was known for his silence, his calmness, and a rare, kind heart. Every day, Amara could be seen struggling against violent waves and climbing over slippery rocks. Why would a turtle endure such hardship? Not for adventure, but for a friend. That friend was Tico, a restless green frog who was quick with his words but incredibly lazy. Tico had a fatal flaw. He feared deep water and refused to learn how to swim properly. Instead of learning to survive, Tico chose the easier path, clinging to Amara's kindness. For years, the image of Amara carrying Tico on his back became a familiar sight. Amara swam silently, straining against the current, while Tico sat comfortably on the shell, dry and safe, constantly complaining, "Hey Amara, you're too slow. Watch out, you're splashing water on me." The sad truth was that Tico never said, "Thank you." He assumed that Amara's service was an obligation, a natural law. As soon as Amara reached the other bank, Tico would hop off and rush away to play, never once looking back to see how his old friend was gasping for air. In psychology, the relationship between Amara and Tico is a classic example of enabling. When we help someone do things they are capable of doing themselves, we are not helping them, we are robbing them of the chance to grow. While making ourselves victims of exploitation, Amara thought he was doing a good deed, but in reality, he was feeding Tico's selfishness. Then one day, a drought arrived. The river level dropped to a record low, revealing jagged underwater rocks that formed a natural bridge connecting the two banks. When Tico saw those rocks, his eyes lit up. He realized he could hop across the river without getting his feet wet. And more importantly, without waiting for the slow turtle. Without a word, Tico jumped off Amara's back in the middle of the river. He leapt nimbly from stone to stone, leaving Amara stranded behind. Tico's only thought was, "Great. I'm free now. I don't need that old taxi anymore." No goodbye, no farewell. Tico's disappearance was as swift and cold as the way he had used Amara all those years. Amara stood frozen in the shallow water. In that moment, he felt the true weight. Not the weight of his shell, but the crushing weight of thousands of days of being taken for granted. The weight of kindness placed in the wrong hands. The feeling of being abandoned when you are no longer useful is more painful than any physical wound. That evening, a wise old heron flew by and saw Amara staring blankly at the water. The heron landed beside him and spoke in a deep, melancholic voice. "Amara, you have the strength to cross any river. But from now on, choose carefully who you allow to ride on your back. Not every burden is your responsibility, and not everyone who walks with you is a friend." Upon hearing those words, a single tear rolled down Amara's cheek. It was not a tear of weakness, but a tear of awakening. That day, Amara performed the most important ritual of forgiveness, forgiving himself. He forgave himself for letting others use him for too long. He forgave his own naivety. And most importantly, he decided to release the burden named Tico from his heart. It was a liberation. Amara understood that boundaries are not selfishness, they are self-respect. A few days later, the rain returned. The river swelled, raging and submerging the rocks. Tico returned to the old riverbank. Shivering and cold, he wanted to cross, but he couldn't jump anymore. He looked around desperately for the familiar shell. But Amara was no longer there. Amara had swum to new waters, places where he could live at ease and be appreciated. Tico stood there, facing the freezing current and his own fear. For the first time, he had to take responsibility for his own life. The lesson from Amara's shell is profound. Helping an ungrateful person is like trying to fill a leaking vase with water. No matter how much you pour, the result is always emptiness. Forgiveness here is the brave act of cutting off the supply to their selfishness, so that both can learn their own lessons. But while Amara and Nislo chose to leave actively, our final character, Nico the Cat, was trapped in a more subtle prison of the mind, waiting in vain. In a forgotten alleyway where the winter wind howled every night, lived a stray cat named Nico. With his scruffy fur and many scars, Nico looked like an old soldier returning from a brutal war. He survived on scraps and by running from fierce dogs. Nico's life was a harsh battle for survival. But Nico had a strange habit. Every morning, instead of hunting for food, he would go and sit in front of a luxurious house. There, right by the doorstep, sat an old clay bowl. The bowl was always empty. No milk, no kibble, not even a drop of water. Yet, Nico sat there, patient as a statue. He stared at the heavy wooden door, imagining that one day it would open. A gentle hand would pour warm milk into the bowl and stroke his small head. The woman who owned the house often saw Nico through the glass window. She saw his frailty, she saw the pleading look in his eyes. But she never opened the door. She never gave him even a crumb of bread. Her indifference was colder than the winter wind screaming outside. So why did Nico keep waiting? In economics and psychology, this is the trap of the sunk cost fallacy. Nico had invested too much time waiting there, a day, a week, then a month. His mind tricked him. If I leave now, all that waiting will have been meaningless. Surely, tomorrow she will open the door. We are the same. We often cling to the past we've invested in, willing to trade our future to wait for something hopeless. One freezing winter morning, as Nico shivered before the empty bowl, a well-fed golden cat walked by. He stopped and looked at Nico with eyes that were both pitying and stern. "Hey friend, don't you know? That door will never open for you." Nico lowered his head, whispering, "But I've waited here for so long." The golden cat shook his head and said something that pierced through the fog in Nico's mind. "You were not born just to sit and wait for someone else's crumbs of affection. You were born to find your own happiness. Waiting for a heartless person won't move them, it will only slowly kill you." Those words felt like ice water, but they awakened Nico's sleeping heart. He looked up at the closed door one last time. It remained terrifyingly silent. Then, Nico stood up. He didn't meow. He didn't scratch at the door. He turned his back and walked slowly in the opposite direction. In Nico's heart, there was no resentment, no anger. There was only a calm but final decision. He chose not to waste another second of his precious life knocking on a door that was not meant for him. The stories of Nico, Amara, and Nislo have ended, but they open a new chapter in our own awareness. What have we learned from them? We learned that some doors close not because we aren't good enough, but because we are standing in the wrong place. Nislo taught us, don't try to wake those who are pretending to sleep. Your absence is sometimes the loudest lesson. Amara reminded us, don't let your kindness become a tool for others to use. Putting down a burden isn't selfish, it is self-love. And Nico showed us, don't let the past imprison your future. Stopping the wait for things that don't belong to you is the first step toward freedom. Ultimately, silent forgiveness is the key. Silent forgiveness means you don't need to make a scene. You don't need revenge. And you don't even need an apology from them. You simply pack up your wounds, set them down by the roadside, and continue walking lightly. It is the act of cutting the invisible chain binding you to toxic people. Only when you stop knocking on the locked door will your hands be free to open new doors. Doors that lead to places where you are truly appreciated and loved. Remember, the one who knows how to walk away in silence is never the loser. If you are ready to let go of your nameless burdens, leave a comment below with the words, "Moving on." Let that be your strongest commitment to yourself today. Thank you for listening to these stories. Love yourself enough to know when to leave. I will see you in the next video.